Hello everyone, welcome to Let's Go Racing. Today we're going to be taking a look at the 1986 Formula One season, 4 at war. We're looking at Alain Prost in the McLaren with a tag Porsche engine, Nigel Mansell and Nelson Piquet, two-time world champion at the time, in the Williams Honda team, and in the team of one really, Ayrton Senna in the Lotus Renault. A season that would be a lot about tyres. It would all come down to tyres and really managing tyres, which in those days wasn't really the done thing as it is in Formula One now. Fuel was also very important. The cars were limited to 195 litres of fuel per race, and 1.5 litre turbo engine producing around 1300 horsepower. The boost juice ratio would be very important. The drivers would have to manage and have to turn the boost down in order to save fuel, in order to loud. And it would be the Williams team with their Honda engine seemed to have the best boost-to-juice ratio management. And defending world champion Alain Prost was looking to become the first man to defend the Formula One world title since Sir Jack Brabham in 1960.
I think everything's going to be very good in the second part of the season. If I can get some points, the first part of the season, I still get a chance to be world champion this year.
The season kicked off in Rio. Two Brazilians on the front row, Ayrton Senna and Nelson Piquet, getting a great getaway, but Nigel Mansell storming down, trying to get around the outside of Senna. Bit of a collision here in the first corner, but Senna led from Mansell. Mansell was determined not to let Senna get away. The Brazilian had been super quick in qualifying, and the fear was that if he was allowed to get out on his own, he would drive away from him. Mansell wasn't too happy to see that happen, and he gave it a go down the inside at the end of the long back straight. The Senna set the tone for the season, thou shalt not pass. Closed the door on Mansell, who ended up in the wall. The Brazilian fans weren't really interested in seeing Nigel Mansell battle for the lead. Mansell clearly frustrated. But the Brazilian fans got what they wanted, to lead. Piquet getting the move done before the corner, using that extra boost from that Honda engine, as Keke Rosberg set the tone for his season by retiring from the race. Prost was on the comeback trail as he stormed past the Ferraris. The Ferraris would not have a very good year in 1986. He passed both of them and ended up in third place. Prost honed in on Senna. Senna was in the lead at this point as Prost went by to take the lead. Piquet had pitted for tyres. There were no rules about tyres really in 1986. If you felt you needed tyres, you came in and pitted. Piquet on fresh rubber took the lead back from Prost as the Brazilian fans cheered. Prost unfortunately then retired with a fuel problem. The Ligier team were doing well in Brazil and having a dice for third place, as the major contenders had really dropped out. But Piquet, he was still there, and he led the field home to take the first win of the season, to the delight of the Brazilian fans, with Senna second. So two Brazilians, first and second. No points for Prost. There was only 2 races that Prost didn't score points in. This was one of them with that fuel problem. Next was the Spanish Grand Prix, which in the 80s was held at Jerez, not Barcelona like it is today. And once again, Ayrton Senna took the pole. It was actually the same front three, Senna, Piquet, Mansell, as the first race. No jump starts in 86 either. You could see Senna creeping forward, but it wasn't really frowned upon. There were no nanny state rules in the 80s. Bit of a coming together and someone losing a wing there. I think it was Teo Fabi's Benetton. Nigel Mansell was being conservative in the beginning of the race, sort of looking to save save fuel, make sure you got it to the end. The rest was a very long race. As Senna lapped a back marker, Mansell was making his way past the McLarens and up into third behind his teammate. Prost was patiently waiting. They called him the Professor because he would save his tyres, he would save his car, he would save his fuel. The polar opposite of his teammate who retired from so many races. So just overdriving the car, the tyres, running out of fuel. Prost would conserve and wait till the end of the race, knowing that it doesn't matter how many laps you lead in Formula One, just as long as you lead the last one. The two Williams boys, no team orders, they were going at it. And Mansell had passed Piquet and had caught Ayrton Senna. And soon he went by into the lead as they came up to lap a back marker here. There were no blue flags in 1986 either. Back markers were not obliged to just jump out of the way, as Nelson Piquet retired with an engine problem. Now, Senna had pitted for new rubber, Mansell had not. Prost had as well, and they were catching. But Mansell, remembering Brazil, wasn't too keen on letting Senna by, but eventually Senna squeezed his way by, and Prost managed to sneak through as well. Mansell decided to pit for tyres. He pitted a bit late. Theory is, if he had pitted one lap earlier, he would have won this race. And that was a quick pit stop in 1986. Mansell caught and passed Prost as Senna led, but his tyres were getting old and Mansell on fresh rubber was catching quick. And this would lead to one of the closest finishes in Grand Prix history.
Then into turn 16, the hairpin. It's going to be one of the closest Grand Prix finishes, whatever happens, that we've seen for a long, long time. They're coming up to the hairpin now. This is it. Down into second gear, and Mansell, if he gets it right, can sprint out of the rear wing of Senna's car. Senna moves across. He's keeping Mansell back, and he wins. Mansell won't like that any more than he likes at Brazil.
0.014 seconds in it. The race to the line there between Senna and Mansell, with Prost third and Rosberg fourth.
I saw him coming very quick, and I realized he had stopped and had new tires, and I had no tires at all, and so I had to really push with no grip. I had to really play around and slide around to try to keep some good speed, and then was very dangerous. I nearly lost the car, maybe 2 laps from the end in one corner. The car went sideways, sideways, sideways. I thought I lost, and then it came back.
No, I mean, when you are leading the race, you are entitled to try and hold the next person up. I think he drove very, very well today, and he didn't shut the door on me. And as you could see at the finishing line, I was right alongside, and I think it was so close. I think they should give us 7.5 points each.
So Senna had his first win of the season, and next up it was Italy, and well, the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola. Michele Alboreto had finished runner-up in 1985, but 86 was a tough year for Maranello.
A little bit better. We have still 4 cars quicker than us, but there is a little improvement compared to the last race, and we are happy.
The Ferrari looked good, but unfortunately for the Italians, it was Senna on pole, with Piquet alongside him and Mansell in third, yet again. And from the line, Senna stormed away, followed by the 2 Williams cars. But it was Piquet who drew level as the McLarens made their way past Nigel Mansell, and Piquet took the lead going into the Tosa corner, and Rosberg got down the inside of Mansell, who was doing his now usual trick of saving fuel in the beginning of the race. Nannini didn't go well for him. The McLarens queued up to get past the Lotus of Senna. Prost going round the outside, and Rosberg sneaking through on the inside up the hill. Mansell pitted with an electrical problem, which the team were able to fix and send him back out. As Rosberg showed, there were no team orders at McLaren either by passing Prost. Senna was still running in third place, but then he had a wheel bearing issue which would force him to retire, as the Italian crowd cheered as the Ferraris went by. Mansell's race eventually ended with a blown Honda, and Alboreto's race ended in the pits with a blown turbo. The cars were not built to be reliable. They were built to just barely be able to finish the race, except Rosberg's car, which was built to have a fuel tank within regulations, and Rosberg would just constantly do this, run out of fuel. Push very hard in the beginning of the race and then run out of fuel. This is Riccardo Patrese also running out of fuel. Even Alain Prost on the last lap of the race didn't look like he was going to make it round. He's trickling home here, weaving the car from side to side just to try and wash any trickles of fuel into the engine to keep it going, as maybe the slowest finish to a Formula One race ever. Prost would often do this, just he would park at the exit of pit lane. There was no chance he was getting around for another lap back to the pits, and the McLaren team would celebrate. Prost won that one with Piquet second. Rosberg classified as fifth, since most of the teams ran out of fuel as they headed to Monte Carlo. And here it was Alain Prost, the defending world champion, would be the one to break the qualifying pattern and get his McLaren on pole, with Mansell second. And as the lights turned green, not off like they do today, the lights turned green, away they went, and Senna got by Mansell into second place. Prost and Senna racing again in Monaco, as they do over the next 10 years. Keke Rosberg would prove overtaking in Monaco is quite possible. The Flying Finn, he loved street circuits, did Keke. He had pitted for tyres though, and then had to do it all over again, and so he got back up behind Alboreto and just said, well, look, go again, look, it's a replay. Prost was in the pits for tyres, which gave the lead to Senna.
This is coming up to complete lap 41 in this 78-lap race. Leading in the yellow helmet, Senna. Right behind him, second, world champion Prost. Third is Rosberg. Down to the Rascasse, down to first gear, 30 miles an hour. Up to the old gasworks corner. Now accelerate away, and this is Prost's chance. He can, if he gets close enough, take Senna on the approach to Sander Box. He's going to try and go around on the outside. But Senna moves across, takes his racing line and keeps ahead.
Yes, Prost being very careful, very sensibly careful, because he's well in charge of the situation. He knows that Senna can't hold him off forever, but he's not going to take any risks. Senna's a hard man. We've seen him make life very difficult for overtaking drivers. There he is, taking the inside line, fending Prost off, giving him no chance of attacking him on the winning line into the corner. So Senna stated his intentions. He's going to play a blocking game, but he can't block him forever.
And Prost is harrying him all the time.
Yes, Prost should be able to get more traction out of the Rascasse as they go onto the pit. So Senna's coming in. So Senna has blocked it. He realises that he can't maintain the situation forever.
Torbay going off and hitting Brundle. That's Torbay's car over the top of Martin Brundle's Tyrrell, rolling over the Lola Ford, and he did that at the right-hander at Mirabeau, and thank heavens, what an incredible recovery. Patrick Torbay is perfectly okay after a tremendously spectacular crash.
Yes, and we see Torbay going down the inside. Brundle doesn't see him coming, moves over, and that flicks him up in the air, and he does a quick loop-the-loop over. There goes the car, but no damage to Torbay there. You see that his head was well away from the ground and was protected by the rollover bar, so really there shouldn't have been any damage.
So Senna had pitted and relinquished the lead to Prost, and a bad accident between Torbay and Martin Brundle. Looked bad, but they both walked away from that quite okay. Prost won the race, and Keke Rosberg managed to bring the McLaren home for a change in second place, with Senna fourth and Mansell fifth. Nelson Piquet, he finished the race but P7. Just had an off day, out of form. It happens sometimes. So Prost led the World Championship in the early stages. And then it was on to Spa. But the teams were greeted at Spa with some sad news. One of the drivers was sadly not there. Elio De Angelis, driving for the Brabham team in '86, was killed in an accident testing the car at the Paul Ricard circuit. And this led to some safety changes. The catch fencing was banned. And a permanent FIA medical service inspector and medevac helicopter became mandatory at all races, as we see today. Nelson Piquet got the pole.
It's Senna been doing all the pole positions so far in all the quick circuits. I don't know why he didn't went very quick. I was expecting him today come very quick.
At the green light, Piquet would lead away into La Source, and Senna squeezing the Benetton into Prost. Prost would get some wing damage. This caused the usual La Source traffic jam. Rosberg and some others just deciding best to just turn around and go back the other way. You see Prost got a bit stuck and held up there. And as he entered Rouge, bent front wing on the McLaren. He pitted and had that changed, while Piquet just stormed off into the distance. Mansell got past Senna. Piquet clipped the curb, spun it round, and kept the Honda howling, as they say. Flicked it back and got going again. As the race settled down, Keke Rosberg, unfortunately, once again having to retire, as did Nelson Piquet. Lots of retirements. In '86, the car's just not reliable. Not as reliable as they are today. Senna rejoined from his pit stop right behind Mansell and began trying to catch the Williams man. This is the fastest pit stop of the year from Stefan Johansson in the Ferrari. This was actually clocked at 6.75 seconds. It's just quite funny, because today that would be a joke, honestly. Senna never caught up with Mansell, who took the win. Another valuable 9 points for his championship, with Senna in second place. Prost recovered to sixth, and it was on to Canada, where Nigel Mansell would take pole position in a damp qualifying session, and Mansell would lead away from the line as well. You see the start-finish straight was different here in Canada. It was on what's now used as the back straight, so the last corner would be the hairpin, which would make for some interesting racing if anyone could be within striking distance. But Mansell was keen. He had dominated all weekend, and he was starting to break away from Senna and the rest. Prost was queuing up behind Senna and was again much quicker than the Lotus Renault at this stage of the race, and really trying to get past. But Senna, he's so good at just defending his racing line. But Prost had enough and said, well, either move out the way because I'm coming. Sometimes you have to get your elbows out. Of course, that cost Senna a bit of time. He lost out to Rosberg and Nelson Piquet, and even René Arnoux Ligier. So Senna would... Nigel Mansell had been unchallenged the whole weekend, really, and came home to take the checkered flag. His second straight win. Prost was second, Piquet third, Rosberg fourth, and Ayrton Senna a lap down in 5th place. The Lotus did struggle with race pace and the fuel management. Across the lake to Detroit, an American street circuit. The drivers didn't like it very much. It was very bumpy, but Senna still took pole position. Nigel Mansell got 2nd place on the bumpy track. Prost had a spin. No active suspension or traction control or even ABS in these days.
I think Detroit is not the best circuit because it's too bumpy and you run between the walls. It's good to be on pole here, but the race is going to be very hard, tough, long race, and I hope we can have a good fight, a clear fight, and a good show for all the public.
At the start, Senna and Mansell had a drag race. Senna made it into the first corner first, but Mansell was not going to be stopped. Mansell was looking for a hat-trick of wins here and would chase down Ayrton Senna and get past. With the Ligiers running well again, Senna was not going to take that from Mansell, and he just went right back past again. Great racing on a narrow, bumpy street circuit. You can see those cars bouncing along. So bouncy that Piquet bounced his car into the wall. After the pit stop, Senna led. Prost was in 2nd, but he was passed by Jacques Lafitte in the Ligier, who was going well today. Senna won the race. Mansell was forced to make a bunch of pit stops, having some tyre troubles, and would only come home 5th, with Keke Rosberg having to retire with a gearbox problem. This was Jacques Lafitte's last podium in his Formula 1 career. And the next race was at Paul Ricard. Senna again got pole from Mansell and Piquet behind. But Mansell again in their traditional drag race now would take the lead. Honda power down the straight. Mansell leads into turn 1. Bit of a traffic jam at the hairpin. Alessandro Nannini's Nanardi blew a turbo and he sprayed oil all over the track, which Senna hit and crashed. He was luckily all right. The Ligiers were running well on their home turf. Prost wanted to do well in his home Grand Prix, and he got past. He then lined up Nelson Piquet. Got past as they went to lap a Zach speed. Rosberg had been going well. After the pit stops, he was leading the race, but Nigel Mansell on fresh tyres came back at him. Then Piquet got by Rosberg. Rosberg by this time in the race having to turn the boost down for fear of running out of petrol. And so Nigel Mansell took the win. Prost 2nd, Piquet 3rd, Rosberg 4th. And no points this time for Ayrton Senna. Prost happy to be on the podium in his home Grand Prix, and happy because he was leading the World Championship now by 1 point from Nigel Mansell and 3 points from Senna. Piquet not really in it at this stage, but Williams Honda were leading the Constructors' Championship as they moved over to England and Brands Hatch. In the 80s, Silverstone and Brands Hatch would alternate. This was also Frank Williams' first Grand Prix that he was attending for the season. He had had his terrible car accident which had left him in a wheelchair. The only Grand Prix he would attend. And all eyes were on Nigel. The British crowd were hoping he could win his home Grand Prix, but it was his teammate Piquet who got pole. And as they pulled away, Nigel Mansell's drive shaft snapped. It looked like the end of his race, but Booten ran wide, crashed, caused a bit of a pile-up. The drivers were okay, but poor Jacques Lafitte, he had hit the wall head first. That's Jonathan Palmer's a doctor. He jumped out to try and help Lafitte. You can see him waving his arms. He's okay, but his legs were smashed. That would be a career-ending injury for Jacques Lafitte. He was airlifted to hospital. He would race in other series, but sadly never again in Formula One. At the restart, Mansell, he took Piquet's spare car for the restart, so now he was racing in Piquet's car with Piquet's setup on it. They just changed the little numbers on it, really. Piquet led, with Mansell second, and the rest all jotting for position. Rosberg, he would retire, jumped out to smoke an early McLaren cigarette there. PS wasn't sponsoring cigarettes either. Senna stopped with a gearbox problem. After the pit stops, they came out in the same order, but Mansell managed to get past Piquet, who missed a gear. Piquet, understandably, would be irritated by this. Mansell was beating him in his own car. Mansell would win the race. The British press would start rumours that Williams were favouring Mansell for the championship over Nelson Piquet. The whole thing about Williams being a British team, Mansell being a British driver. Maybe Piquet even believed that. Anyway, he came second and Prost third. Nigel had won his home Grand Prix. And then it was off to Germany and Hockenheim and the old track at Hockenheim. Some of the things you see at this track are fantastic. This is one of the tracks that they've changed, modernized it. Worse, really. Keke Rosberg managed to get pole position. He'd also announced his retirement this weekend. This would be his last season. At the start, Keke didn't have such a good getaway, but Senna did. He barged through the middle of the two McLarens and hit turn one first, followed by Benetton and Gerhard Berger as his teammate collided with a Ferrari. So Senna led from Berger and Rosberg. This is what I miss about this track. This view of the cars disappearing down the road into the forest at full speed. Watch Rosberg here. He goes into the corner third. And he comes out first. Round the outside. Certainly with a foot flat and the boost turned to maximum. That's the only way Rosberg knew how to drive. Nelson Piquet would get past Senna into the chicane, a maneuver he called opening the legs. He then caught Rosberg and made him open the legs into the same chicane. Mansell clipped a curb at the chicane, ran it a bit wide and dropped 2 places. Keke, well, he had pushed too hard in the beginning and ran out of fuel. As Piquet came home to take the win, which he believed was much needed after Brands Hatch. Senna weaved his Lotus home in second. Prost, well, he ran out of fuel and gave up. Piquet gave Rosberg a lift home. So Prost was actually classified a lap down in 6th place, behind his teammate Rosberg, both classified but both out of fuel. And then it was off to Hungary, and this was the first time we went to Hungary. Zach Speed paid tribute by changing their West sponsorship on one of the cars to East. Senna, as usual, got the pole, but had quite a few spins.
The track is very safe, so you know if most of the place. If you have a spin, you have runoff areas, so you try. And as it is very slippery, that means when you go just a bit over the limit, you are gone. You cannot recover for it. So the consequence of it is a spin. And so in 3 days I had 5 spins, which is a lot. At the start, Senna led away from Nelson Piquet.
The Lotus finally winning a drag race against the Williams Hondas. Mansell managed to get past Piquet into second, but Piquet was having none of that. Piquet began catching Ayrton Senna and went nicely by into turn 1. Senna would remember this, however.
End of lap 54. The crowd rises to see Nelson Piquet come out of Ayrton Senna's slipstream, pass on the inside, and Senna retake the lead as Piquet overshoots almost.
Yeah, Senna put him under a lot of pressure there. He moved over on him, and that Piquet was committed. Here we see now Senna starts to move right, just as Piquet does. He's pushing him over to the right, and of course off the line there, the track is very slippery. So Piquet was committed, there was nothing he could do, and of course he arrived at the corner a little bit too tight, too quickly for that line. You see him lock his right rear wheel, but like the craftsman he is, he held on to the car. Yes, Piquet, with all his experience, will be very careful when passing Senna. He knows Senna is very hard, and of course he will be acutely aware that there must be no physical contact, because he's really got this race won, and the only, or barring mechanical failure, and the only other thing he can do is if he makes contact or allows Senna to make contact with him. Senna, you see, moving to the right, making it hard, and Nelson's got round the outside of it. Oh! Big slide from Nelson and nearly contact. Tremendous stuff, real wheel-to-wheel stuff.
Some great driving and some great racing, great skill from Nelson Piquet, who we just don't see today. He won the race, Senna second, Mansell third. Alain Prost would begin his struggles with the circuit. He never did well at Hungary. And for the first time since Brazil, Prost did not score any points. Then it was over to Austria. Austria is the home of the now Red Bull Ring. It was called the Österreich Ring back in those days. And it's also the home of a young man named Gerhard Berger, who the fans were out to support. Berger was going really well, but it was actually his teammate Theo Fabi in the other Benetton who took the pole. BMW power was really going well here in Austria. So 2 Benettons on the front row, just to have something a little bit different for a change. They motored up the hill, and for the first time in many years there was no accident at the first corner. Mansell was stuck up behind Alain Prost. That didn't really want to be. Took some slipstream, but was struggling to get past the McLaren. Great little race between these two. Poor Berger stopped with a problem here. This pit stop took 2 laps. He stopped for tyres and they discovered his battery was flat. In the meantime, Mansell had gotten past Prost in the pit stops, while his teammate Piquet retired with engine troubles. Mansell then retired. Poor Nigel would once again have a drive shaft snap on him. This left the Ferraris to dice with a Lola, believe it or not. There's Patrick Tambay in the Lola, and they're not fighting for the lead here. This is actually Alain Prost coming up to lap the Lola and the Ferrari, who are fighting over 2nd and 3rd place. No blue flags, remember. Keki once again jumping out of the car before it even stops. He obviously really needed a cigarette this day. So Prost won, and all his title rivals had dropped out of the race. Senna had also suffered an engine problem and retired in the pits. Prost doing his usual park the car straight after the race because out of fuel. So there you go, Prost lapping the entire field with all the points. Ex-world champion Alan Jones in the Lola in 4th place. Prost sharing the podium with This was a big step towards his world championship. Nigel was still leading it from Prost. Senna not too far behind, and Nelson Piquet, after his win in Brands Hatch, had made up some points as they went across to Monza, and the mad Italian Tifosi fans hoping for a good result for Ferrari.
Yes, but you know, if you look at the speed trap, we are exactly 20 kilometers slower than the Benetton with the BMW engine at the end of the straight. That's why I said that I'm very happy, and I can't go much quicker. In any case, I can't be on pole.
Prost couldn't be on pole, but Teo Fabi in the Benetton BMW was. BMWs were really fast. Prost had a problem. This is the beginning of the warm-up lap, and you see Teo Fabi looks like he stalls. Prost had a problem with the car. Fabi got his car going again. Prost ran back to the pit, jumped in his spare car, and would have to start the race from pit lane. Fabi swapped pole position for last. He managed to get going, but the whole field had passed him, and so he had to start last. So Mansell inherited pole position. And as they stormed away, BMW power outdid Williams power. Senna had a problem, and he retired instantly from the race. Gerhard Berger led from Nigel Mansell and Nelson Piquet. The Ligier up there doing well again. There's a Brabham overtook the other Ligier. So the man on the move was Alboreto in the Ferrari, keen to do well in front of the Italian fans. Mansell caught Berger and overtook, coming out of the Parabolica. Piquet then did the same, going into the Parabolica. Alboreto lined up Gerhard Berger, and the Italian Tifosi cheered as the Ferrari overtook the Benetton. They didn't cheer so much, however, when Alboreto lost it coming out of the chicane. Now, Prost had been going really well. This was 27 laps into the race. The stewards decided that after letting him risk his neck for 27 laps, they would black flag him for illegally changing his car. Prost decided to ignore them and dispute it after the race, but his engine blew, and he pulled over at the side of the track anyway. It's really stupid of the stewards this to let him go out there for that long. Alboreto unfortunately had to park up his Ferrari, while Mansell and Piquet continued to race. No team orders in 1986. These two were racing for the World Championship. Piquet needed a win. He would stalk Nigel. There were two chicanes back in those days in Monza. And as they entered the Curva Grande, Piquet got by. Piquet would go on to win. Nigel just having to settle for second place today. And the Ferrari fans were happy as Stefan Johansson brought his Ferrari home in third place. Keke Rosberg managed to finish in fourth. Piquet was finding it difficult to beat Mansell.
It's very difficult to race a championship with somebody that is very good like Nigel, and have the same car, have the same information, knows everything about me, and know all my tricks, and know what a car I'm running, know my setup. You know, it'll be very, very difficult.
The next round was in Estoril, outside the city of Lisbon in Portugal. The locals would support Piquet and Senna, being Portuguese speaking. This is a nice track. I really wish they still went here. Honda would be supplying Lotus with engines in 1987, and Senna was already forging the relationship. But what about team orders in McLaren?
No, we haven't discussed any team orders or anything like that. The only thing we've done until now is that Ron Dennis asked me if it was okay that Alain would keep the spare car for the last 3 races. It was very nicely asked, and there was absolutely nothing, no objection from my side. I think it's the least we can do.
So Prost could count on some support from Keke Rosberg, who now could not win the World Championship. Mansell, I don't think, could count on the same support from his teammate, who was fighting for the World Championship, and for Senna the argument was irrelevant because he was in a team of 1. Bernie Ecclestone organised a photo of the 4 World Championship contenders. 3 races to go, and 4 men in with a shot of winning the title. I say Senna's in a team of 1. He did have a teammate, Johnny Dumfries, but he was brought in really just to drive the other car around. Senna got the pole, and in the usual drag race, once again the Williams Honda of Nigel Mansell beat him into turn 1. The Benettons were coming on strong and managed to get into 3rd place there ahead of the McLarens. Senna was falling back in the championship and really needed a win in Portugal. Piquet would get past the Benetton here of Gerhard Berger. Berger was getting pretty used to running at the top with it. So Mansell led there from Senna. He was starting to pull away. Just had better efficiency from the Honda engine. Nico's dad got past Gerhard Berger in a yellow McLaren, painted yellow because Marlboro's yellow in Portugal. Senna motored on with now Piquet bearing down on him as well as Prost. Marshall decided to be stupid. Someone could have been killed there, just like John Price at Kyle Army. Piquet did one of his spins, kept the Honda howling, flicked it back on, dropped 2 positions, and continued. But Nigel was out front, and he really didn't look back. He won the race by quite some distance. Senna had to try and weave and trickle home again with fuel as Prost got by. Benetton ran out of fuel. Senna did manage just to trickle it home across the line. Big win for Mansell. Senna was out of the championship. Prost thought he was too.
Anyway, 2nd place is not bad, but I think now for the championship will be very difficult. But I'm very pleased for Nigel. I think he really deserved it this year.
That means that you concede the World Championship, yes?
I mean, I will fight until the end. But I must admit that to be realistic, I think Nigel is world champion today, but it's not finished yet.
It was the most important race of all year because we're coming to the end of the year and only 2 more races to go. And with Nelson and Alain, the current world champion, right behind me, I just had to win if I was going to keep in touch.
You can win the championship in Mexico.
Let's hope so. I'm not thinking about it still, Murray. I've done the best job I can today and it's got me 9 points. Unfortunately, at the next race we've got to start dropping points. So I don't know, there's still 2 races to go.
The British press represented by Murray Walker there, trying to convince Prost that he should just concede the title and move on. Speaking of dropping points, in 1986, as we moved on to Mexico here, only 11 best finishes counted towards your World Championship score. Senna took the pole but was out of the championship.
It doesn't concern me, really. I have to look after what the team puts behind me and try to give them back the best result as possible. And therefore, it doesn't make any difference for me whoever is around and trying to win championship or the race, whatever.
Senna was a race car driver designed to win. At the start, he sped away, but Mansell forgot to select first gear or got stuck in neutral. Whatever happened there happened, and he would be starting from really effectively last. Senna raced Piquet down to turn 1, went late on the brakes and took the lead. But Piquet, he just went round the outside and into the inside on the next corner and got the lead straight back. Senna wasn't content to just sit behind Piquet. Didn't care that Piquet was maybe racing for a world championship. He just wanted to win. Gerhard Berger in the Benetton here, he was coming on strong. But Prost managed to get past him into 2nd place. It's worth pointing out that this Benetton was running Pirelli tyres, all the rest were running Goodyears. And Berger inherited the lead when all the Goodyear guys in front of him stopped in the pits, including Mansell, who would make 3 pit stops in this race. He got out of the pits and chased down his teammate. Piquet here in 4th place. Mansell needed to finish 4th to win the World Championship. But it was Berger in the Benetton who won the race. This is actually Gerhard Berger's first ever win, Benetton's first ever win, and the last win for a BMW turbocharged engine.
I put on the left side hard tires and the right side soft tires, and I wasn't sure, but after half distance I feel the tires feels alright, so I was trying to do all the race without pit stop.
So Berger, clever on the tires, no silly nanny state tyre rules in those days, do whatever you wanted. A handy second place for Alain Prost. Nigel Mansell was leading the World Championship from Prost. Piquet, they still both had a chance to win as they headed to Australia and Adelaide and a street circuit. And Bernie Ecclestone would organise an end-of-year photo with all the drivers, teams. Mansell would take pole, but he did clip the wall. What were the drivers thinking would be their tactics for the race, though?
I can't believe they are much quicker than us. So in this fact, I would say that they're going to fight together and it's going to be good for me.
I am delighted because, I mean, you couldn't have someone better next to you than your teammate, and he's got to win the race, so the last thing he'll be doing is sort of dicing at the first corner. It's 82 lap race, and, you know, it's the 82nd lap that counts and not the first lap.
Now go try to push Mansell out and try to win the race.
Piquet always had a good sense of humour. Keke Rosberg would be starting his last Grand Prix. The two Williams boys lined up on the front row to do battle for the World Championship. It would be Mansell who would lead, and Senna would take that lead from Mansell with the original street fighter Keke Rosberg looking racy. Piquet would get past Mansell. Remember, Senna by this time was out of the championship as Rosberg got past Mansell as well. He just wanted to win here, Ayrton Senna, but Piquet needed a win for the World Championship. And in the Williams Honda versus Lotus Renault drag race, the Williams Honda would come out on top yet again. Keke Rosberg getting past Ayrton Senna. And closing in on Nelson Piquet. Mansell would get past Senna into the coveted third position that he needed to win the World Championship. These guys were really racing hard as Keke Rosberg overtook Piquet for the lead. Prost got past Senna. Prost had been saving his tyres a little bit in the beginning. Piquet had a spin, his usual trick. Piquet had recovered and started to chase down Nigel and went by. This is for second place after all the pit stops. Rosberg would have his tyre delaminate, and then, well, this happened.
Sympathy and all the other appropriate words for Keke Rosberg. He may have been prepared to move over, and look at that! How that, and colossally, that's Mansell! That is Nigel Mansell, and the car absolutely shattered. He's fighting for control, and you can see what's happened. Mansell is out of the race. Now, this could change and will change the World Championship.
What an absolute tragedy for Mansell. Obviously, the tyres went at almost the same time as Keke Rosberg, so there's a wear problem. Piquet must be made aware of that by radio, because it means he, with his tyres, will be here. We're going to see what happened again, and that's an absolute tragedy, because that means that poor Mansell, that is terrible at the last moment.
Into the pits goes the Williams.
And I wouldn't be at all surprised if his team didn't call him in, because they will have seen on a TV monitor that two people have lost these tyres. Nelson was running the same tyres, and so Prost is now a favourite to win the World Championship if he can hold on.
Poor Nige walked away as Prost came around to win the race and the World Championship. He had started this race third place in the World Championship and had ended up winning it. A great season and a great champion, Alain Prost, defending the World Championship that he had won the previous year. You see he won it by just 2 points. Piquet only 1 point behind Mansell in second place. But Williams Honda did dominate the Constructors' World Championship, so they did have something to take away. Prost had won the championship in not the best car, perhaps a further feather in his cap.
I cannot believe, it's fantastic. I knew that it was possible, I was always confident. I was confident about my car, about my team. They've done a fantastic job, but I knew that I need luck, a little bit of luck to win this championship, and I had some luck today. So it's really fantastic. But that's my luck. I'm very sorry for them, for KK, because he has done a fantastic race, especially the beginning, and very, very hard first lap. It was fantastic, and I knew that he could help me, so I was very confident. I was very pleased that he was leading the race, and also I'm very sorry for Nigel, because I know how it is to lose the championship as the last race, and I'm very, very sorry for him. It must be very hard.
Yes, Prost had lost the 1984 World Championship to Niki Lauda at the last race of the season by just half a point. But he was now a two-time world champion, along with fellow the next season in 7. So 1986, a great world championship there. It came down to 3 drivers at the last race. The young man Senna pushed him all the way, and his time would eventually come. Awesome season, great racing, really, really good. Great strategies from all the different drivers. And that's going to be it for this video. Hope you all enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did. Leave a hate if you didn't. And we'll see you in the next one.